Hello, welcome to 21 This Week. I'm Susan Heltemes filling in for Casey Aiken. Coming up next, to dare breasts or not? That is the question in Ocean City. Brian Frosh grabs the headlines, and is civility in politics dead or on life support? We're joined today by a panel who will share their unique perspectives. Henry Hailstock, past president, Montgomery County Branch, NAACP. Mark Uncapher, secretary of the Maryland Republican Party. Former member of the Maryland Board of Education, Laurie Halverson, and John Hurson, former Democratic Majority Leader of the Maryland House of Delegates. Stay tuned for these topics and more. Across the nation, a movement advocating for women's top freedom came to Ocean City, and the police were told to steer clear of the offenders on the Ocean City beaches. Laurie, as a female and a mom, other than breastfeeding, are you concerned about bare-chested females on the beaches of Ocean City, which is a family-friendly kind of place?
Well, Susan, I'd like to think I'm an open-minded Republican, but I think most people, whether they're Democrats or Republican, would not want children to be on a beach in Ocean City where women are topless. So I think that I'm just not in support of topless women in Ocean City.
Okay. Well, in response, the Ocean City Town Council on June 10th passed an ordinance that stated there is no constitutional right for an individual to appear in public in a state of nudity. Whatever personal right one has to be nude or in a state of nudity, that right becomes a subject to government interest and regulation when one seeks to exercise it in public. Showing the female breast with less than a fully opaque covering is going to be subject to a fine of $1,000. So, Henry, will this pass the Attorney General's review, and what will the court say?
Well, as you know today, it has passed somewhat as a possibility. However, I think they're on thin ice because of the Maryland law. But personally, as a father and a grandfather, I have a problem in a public beach that does not advertise the possibility of a nudity on the beach for me to take my children, my grandchildren to that beach, because I don't think they need to be exposed to that.
Okay.
Can I add one thing?
Sure.
Brian Frosh, the AG, has an opinion which came out today, which Henry referred to. That opinion actually carries a lot of weight. It
says probably.
I know, it says probably, but the point is the authorities, any public official across the state can weigh in and ask the Attorney General to give an opinion on the law. That opinion can be brought into court, and it weighs very heavily with judges and everybody else around the state. That's an important opinion that he said, this is my opinion, that this is probably, constitutional to prohibit this. And that will weigh very heavily in the court.
I think there are going to be some opinions on that will also weigh heavily on it, and I don't think it'll stop at a local jurisdiction. I think it will possibly go higher, because I think these people are really interested in changing.
They are going to challenge it. They've said, no, this is.
And it's more than one group.
So this is the question: should there be a place on beaches in the United States, Ocean City included, and Rehoboth and Bethany, where people can go if they wish, like women who want to suntan in the
I mean, my opinion is there are beaches in this country where you can do that.
Do we have them here in this state?
Yes, not in our state.
Not in Maryland.
And the question is whether or not we should have it in our state. And I think that's an open question. I don't think it's a good idea.
Okay, well,
but I'll just give you my
And
opinion.
I think it's
That's how I
interesting
feel.
that Democrats are on the side of Republicans on this issue, which is really
family
fascinating.
values, we all have
Susan,
them.
I'm just glad that we didn't feed into this news story with an inappropriate graphic.
That's right, and there we go. Well, John, you have to let me know where those beaches are. So, during the recent legislative session, the General Assembly granted broad powers to Attorney General Brian Frosh to sue the federal government, making Maryland the 42nd state that gives no role to the General Assembly and governor in such matters. And this week, Maryland Attorney General Brian Frosh and D.C. AG Kurt Racine sued Donald Trump, alleging that the president is violating violating anti-corruption clauses in the Constitution by not severing ties with his businesses, a violation of the emoluments clause, which so many have heard about lately. So, Mark, you read the legal document. Do you think it passes the legal test?
No, I think actually it's important to look at the most recent Supreme Court cases in public corruption cases. Overwhelmingly, last June, by a vote of 8-0, the Supreme Court knocked out the Bob McDonald prosecution, which was a test of this principle of whether or not a government act is required in addition to receiving a benefit. The Supreme Court has really pulled back on these kinds of prosecutions where there's no act involved and there's simply a benefit. So I would argue that when you get to the courts and when they look at the precedent in this area, there's really going to be no traction.
But what's interesting about this one in comparison to McDonald, it takes it to a whole new level, right? And did this...
Yeah, and let me add one other thing. I'm not sure the emoluments clause was part of the prosecution in the governor's case in Virginia.
But the constitutional principle, when you read that
Yeah.
particular decision, is very much on point.
But there are legal arguments that say the emoluments clause is very clear. You cannot take a benefit from a foreign country. So that was not the constitutional question or the legal question in the Virginia case.
And you see, I have a problem with this primarily because of the president's influence. Okay, when you have businesses, and I understand that, and everybody said this is a new issue. It's not a new issue. Think about the Kennedys and what he had to do with their businesses and what have you. My concern is the fact that he is the president. He needs to come up with some type of right or privilege to not allow his holdings to have influence on anyone coming into his businesses. For instance, the golf courses and everything else. They have raised the rates at the clubs, at his hotels and everything else, simply because people are coming in trying to influence his opinions on different things. So I think publicly he needs to come out and do something so that this won't be allowed. I understand constitutionally.
The way the courts will treat that is that's a political question. I mean, the emoluments is actually goes back to George Washington.
Right. Yes, it does.
Right.
But can we go, there's
snuff
another
boxes.
point, though, in this question that I want to deal with. Since that suit was filed, 196 Democrats also filed it. But what is interesting, some Republicans in Maryland have said that Frosh is a grandstander and is trying to garner political strength through this suit. So how should we view Frosh because of what he did?
Well, I'll talk about this a little in my shout out at the end. But the fact of the matter is we have an attorney general who's gotten more powers through the legislative session to make these kind of suits, just like 42 other states. I don't, if anybody knows Brian Frosh is not a grandstander. I mean, he's a shrinking violet. Right. And sorry, Brian, but he is not that kind of guy. He's very legally oriented, and I don't think that's what Brian's doing. I think Brian, along with 42 other states, wanted the power to be able to sue the federal government on behalf of the citizens of Maryland, and that's what he's done.
And we need to be careful about going against some of his opinions because he does his homework. Yeah. I have to admit that. And
Brian Frosh works hard.
And I don't think he would enter something like this
Well,
if he wasn't halfway
we're getting
sure.
close to the end. What do you want to add, Mark?
We'll see. I'm fairly comfortable that that a lot of the speculation about where he can go in discovery, none of this will take place.
Okay, what do you have to add, Laurie? And then
Yeah,
we have to go on.
Trump listened to his lawyers. He did everything possible he could. Why sue him? Wasn't there a better way to go about this? This just seems like a very harsh thing for Frosh to do, and why him versus,
other states have sued on other things. But anyway, we're going to be right back after this short break. Don't go away. Welcome back. When Newt Gingrich signed the contract with American, historians conjecture that American politics took a sharp turn towards partisan rancor, never before seen. Then, on the night of President Obama's inauguration, Senator Mitch McConnell held a meeting with fellow Republican senators, and a decision was made to block Obama whenever possible and make him a one-term president. Since then, the political temperature spiked, and the Trump campaign took negativity to a whole new level, first in the primary and then in the general election, when no candidate went unscathed, either in person or by tweets, rather. Laurie, this last week, the Virginia gubernatorial primaries took place, and the Trump loyalist Corey Stewart narrowly lost to Republican stalwart Ed Gillespie. Stewart has not yet endorsed Gillespie. Will the level of political discord on the Republican side hurt Gillespie in November in an election that Democrats are favored to win?
I think it's going to actually help him, and the reason I'm thinking that is I think chills are going up the spines of people everywhere, all the Democrats everywhere, because Ed Gillespie just won by 1%, and he was projected to win by a large margin. So that just proves that Trump has a very big influence on voters. So I think we're going to see some positive things coming if there's a smart strategy in the campaigns.
On the Republican
side. If Gillespie does not call people names and keeps a distance from Trump, I think that he will look better than his Democratic opponent, who is saying awful things about Trump. I think he'll end up looking like the negative person, and people will want to vote for someone who has civility.
And I've seen analysis that suggested that there were, because it's an open primary state, that there were a lot of folks who might have voted in the Republican primary who opted to vote for Northam because they felt that he was a more moderate Democrat.
Now, and what I heard on the other side is that people in that vote that you just talked about were so frustrated with all the Republicans, especially Trump, that they went with Northam and planned to stick with him in the general. So that'll be it'll be an interesting
That'll be the
thing.
question, yeah.
So Henry, on the Democratic side, Lieutenant Governor Ralph Northam won by a comfortable margin over former Congressman Tom Perriello, who quickly endorsed the victor. And Northam's campaign made national news. It was amazing with his TV ad that called Donald Trump a narcissistic maniac. And do you think this ad is going to be a precursor of how Democrats are going to run their campaigns in 2018?
No, I don't. And I was surprised that he did that so openly, because we're looking at what's going to take place in the community, how he's going to run it. And we felt at some point that he was the person to do that and to turn it around and make things grow in Northern Virginia, which is basically necessary here, and not really go into the political aspect of name calling and political things. What he was saying other than that was talking about health care,
and he is a doctor.
Yes, and talking about really helping the communities to grow economically.
He was on Coach Onambi today, and he was asked about this ad, and he said, as a physician, and then he went into the medical talk about it, how this is how you diagnose someone who has all.
To get back to your question, I mean, what kind of campaign ads are going to be run in the next cycle? I think that ad that you saw is going to be very typical of what Democrats run.
They're going to run against Donald Trump.
I think they are.
Even on a local level.
Even on a local level, because I think that Trump is such a polarizing figure for a lot of Democrats that I think that's what they're going to do. I agree with you, Henry, that I'm not sure that's the right tactic.
No, it's not.
I think we should be talking about health care and things that are important to working families, but I think there's going to be a temptation.
Let's move on for a bit, because I think that Maryland and Virginia are unique, and we're going to get into Maryland now because we're so close to D.C. And on the local level, County Executive Ike Leggett has said that he has noticed a change in the discourse in Montgomery County of late that reflects to some degree the change in the national level. But Mark, how do you think our campaigns here in Montgomery and in the state of Maryland, being so close to D.C. and Trump and all, will be affected next year? And I'm particularly interested in your thoughts about Larry Hogan, who has never once spoken publicly about Trump.
I'm going to go back and segue to a comment that John made, but to answer your question, which is that one of the criticisms of the campaign that Hillary had was that she talked all about negative stuff about Donald Trump and not enough about issues. And
But
I
it
think,
was not
I
negative
understand,
in
no,
comparison to what he
no, I
said
understand.
about her.
I understand, but I think the point is that people want to hear what elected officials are going to do in the position that they're running for.
Do you think things
and
have
let me
changed
finish.
though
Let me
in
finish.
6 months though?
And I think that consistently is true. And so I think candidates that are predicating their whole campaign about running against Trump are going to lose the opportunity, if you will, to make the case of why they're going to do a better job in the office they're running for. So I hate to give, not that I'm giving advice to whoever, I agree with the
my
point you're
comment
making.
on that would be is that the temptation of a candidate who's a Democrat is in order to turn out the base, and the base is angry.
Sure.
They are activated. The young people are activated. It's like, give me red meat. And there's going to be that temptation.
Well, let me tell you
for
what the red meat
candidates.
is because they think they've been ignored for so long.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. And now they're coming up to vote. And that's the biggest issue. They want, what are you going to do for me?
Right.
Now, Trump has already said he's running again. He's already gone in and signed papers and everything else. So I think the Democrats need to look at what we need to do to bring those people on our side.
Yeah.
I don't hear that yet because really what are they're doing something in legislation, but they're not doing something in the public to talk to people about it.
And that's what Bernie
Okay,
Sanders
so-
offered. What am I going to do for you?
But I want to get back. Do you think that because we've got a lot to talk about yet, do you think, Mark, that the Maryland campaign will be negative in Montgomery County?
Oh, I'm sure it will be. But my point is that it's a strategic mistake not to talk about issues people care about.
Okay, and we need to talk some more in the future, and I had to cut you off right there,
sure.
about Hogan and the relationship to Trump and what that will mean. But John, the shooting of Congressman Scalise brought this political discord to a very public level when a Bernie Sanders supporter shot at a Republican ball practice this week. Mental health and gun issues aside, a Democratic fanatic made news like so many right-leaning shooters have done in the past for a moment, and our nation seemed united for 24 hours. But then Donald Trump was tweeting away, attacking the Justice Department and his favorite nemesis, Hillary Clinton. Where are we going?
Let me take issue with one thing you just said, which is right-wing shooters. We have had
More
terrorist
conservative
attacks.
thinking.
We've had terrorist attacks across this country. We've had San Bernardino. There have been a lot of shootings, and you can't necessarily. And I think it's wrong
we
to.
had Florida. We had the school
I know,
in
but
Connecticut.
I think it's wrong to say right or left in terms of these
More
shooters.
conservative-minded speakers.
Why don't we just say sick?
Yeah,
Yes.
I
Why don't we
just say sick.
sick?
Sounds
But
good.
where are we going in all
Well,
this?
I think the place we're going, I was really encouraged by what happened at the baseball game last night.
The Democrats did
Democrats
win
and
the game?
They did win.
But they put it
Democrats
on
and Republicans, they
Scalise's
gave
desk.
Scalise's the trophy. That, if we can nurture that ability to work together. Let me just put in your minds for something. These congressmen are under incredible pressure, and they need to realize this is like you've been elected for a job for 2 years. If you don't get reelected, fine. Move on. Your life is not over. So if they can get
John,
that into their head, then they can work together.
And there was this moment of bipartisanship last night, a very brief moment, but then, Americans are angry. A report came out that Maryland could lose billions of dollars if health care reform is done.
Bad policy.
I know.
But debate it, but don't heighten the language and the fight to the point of criticizing people in the wrong way.
This is the issue. Democrats are angry, and they
So
view,
are Republicans.
Yes,
Sure.
and today I saw a stream of Republicans on television, and I was flipping channels, and they were all upset with Donald Trump, with his tweeting and his negativity at this time.
They've got to get beyond Donald Trump.
that's
Donald
nothing
Trump
new.
is bad for the the brand of Republican right now. They need to act independently. of Donald
But
Trump.
what can we
I
do
disagree.
here?
Let's start with the first principle, which is not to challenge the bona fides of people who you disagree.
Yeah.
People can disagree for principled reasons. Let's not assume that it's because of
They're stupid or
they're
short or
stupid
little
or
or
they're
They're
corrupt
bought,
or they're
yeah.
bought or whatever it is. Let's just start with that basic principle
But here
until
today,
proven
we
otherwise.
only have a minute left now. Republicans and Democrats are seated at the table. What can we do? I said the other week we need to reach out to a person of the other
I
party.
have been saying for years, even on this station, what you need to do is have people galvanize and then vote the people out that are not doing what they're supposed to be doing and not doing what they said they were going to do. I've always said that I'm tired of hearing the rhetoric in campaigns. I'm tired of hearing what they want us what they want us to hear.
I know, but what
Look
can
at
we?
their-
Oh, that's true. You have to vote. But what can we do to
Get-
help tone down the rhetoric?
Well, I think the leaders should not be sharing on Facebook horrible articles. There was one about Scalise that I saw today on my Facebook page that one of our, I'm not going to say who it was, but a county councilman shared it.
Oh my
And it
God.
was horrible, and I'm like, our leaders need to be leaders
Yeah.
and show,
Okay, I think
show the way.
I
and-
think this is the way we need to lead in our own way. Stop using names, and Henry is absolutely right. Vote them out if you don't like what they
That's
stand for. Come out to vote. That's important. We're going to be right back with parting shots. And you know, now with parting shots, Henry.
I have to basically say I get tired of politics being a part of things that we are doing here in the county. I'm on the nominating committee for the Board of Trustees candidacies. And now I'm seeing the,
Board of Trustees of what?
I said Montgomery County.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And now I'm seeing the candidates that we're giving to the governor being held up because of possibility of political appointments. That is wrong, and we should keep the democratic structure that we have now.
Mark.
I was reading today in the Bethesda Beat, the Bethesda magazine online, that in the last year and a half, we have not, in our economic development efforts in Montgomery County, been able to add a single large new major employer and bringing in. Now, we spend about $5 million a year in that effort. I think it's important we keep the people's feet to the fire, if you will, on getting better economic development for this county.
Laurie.
To us, Friday was the last day of school for Montgomery County children, and I saw a couple kids walking by and talked to them, and it just reminded me of what it felt like to be finished with school for the summer. To prevent summer slide, I would hope that parents will take advantage of our Montgomery County libraries. They have excellent programs for reading, to get your kids reading over the summer. Computers are great, but put that computer down and read a book.
And go outside and get some fresh air.
Yeah, that too.
John.
Happy summer to everyone. I just want to highlight what happened in the legislature with empowering Brian Frosh, the AG, to do more, following the lead of 42 other states. But this is a big deal for the legislature to give up power for the governor to control those lawsuits. That's a big political deal. So I want to congratulate the legislature for doing what 42 other states have done and empowering Brian Frosh to do that.
Okay, well, tomorrow is going to be the 45th anniversary of the break-in of the Watergate Hotel. I find it amazing that it's 45 years, and today was the second anniversary of when Donald Trump came down the escalator. I don't know if there's any connection between the two, but anyway, 2 years now he has been on the scene.
Susan's trying very hard to make a connection.
No, I'm not. But it's 45 years. That just is mind-boggling. So I hope all of the dads here today and those in our audience have a very great Father's Day weekend. I hope you get pampered and have great food and great gifts. I want to thank all of our viewers for joining us, and be sure to follow us on social media. And see you next time for Montgomery County's hardest-hitting political talk show, 21 this week. And I'm Susan Heltemes. Bye for now.